It worked this time. Awesome. Hi, I'm Brittany from Devise and Conquer Coaching, and I wanted to chat really quick about one of the APIs that Apple released this week for their Worldwide Developer Conference. I talked to a lot of parents and teens, and sometimes something that comes up are parental controls. And so I wanted to talk about one of the new APIs called Screen Time API. And one of the reasons I wanted to chat about it is because sometimes parents are asking, like, how can we have more control over this, or keep them from staying up forever late, which has been especially a problem during the pandemic. And there's a long history of third-party services or apps that try to restrict teen usage on their iPhone or iPad, or kids and teens, and they've often been really problematic. They were usually either using a framework that was not approved by Apple for that purpose, either device management, which is meant for businesses to like hand out devices to their employees, or using API frameworks to track what the teens were doing. In this case, it was teens usually for the VPN service, the virtual private network. And these were really problematic. Not all of them were horrid, but some were. And some ended up being actually quite predatory and using the information and gathering it themselves and selling it, which can be used to manipulate people and all kinds of not fun stuff. And one of the responses to this was, hey, you haven't given us a good way to do it. And Apple did finally release it. And the really cool thing is that all of the information, like if you are, you meaning the parent probably, if you are going to be using it, knowing that no one has access to this information except you and your child. So Apple doesn't have access. The third party, as long as they're using this API, they could still be doing it the shady way. I don't know. But they're the only people who have access. And that is really, really important. Yeah. Some bad stuff happened. And so I want to talk a little bit about it. But before I do, I want to really quickly say, like, if you are a parent and this is something you're thinking about implementing, to think about making sure you're having a really open dialogue with your kids and that you're coming up with these rules together. I haven't worked with this API. Like, I don't know ways around it, but they're clever. And it's a lot more important for you to talk about the reasons that you want to be careful online and as far as it's age appropriate, what some of the dangers are and what you're trying to protect them from. And sometimes what we're trying to do is the same thing. That was the reason I initially looked into this. I use a lot of screen time features for myself so that I can make the best choices about what I'm doing and when. When I set them up, I'm smart. When it's late or early in the morning, I'm less smart, and I'm going to make less good choices up to my own devices. No pun intended. Anyway, so one of the things that you could talk about is, hey, like, this is a hard thing. I have a hard time with it too, if you also do. Like, this is normal. Like, we came up with the term doom scrolling for a reason. It's not just kids. And talking about how what we really want to do is be making wiser choices. And so that's why coming up with what you're doing together is best. And don't be secretive about it. If you can see what they're looking at, they need to know that. For your relationship, it's important to have a relationship that is based on some trust. And so before we dive into the other things, which could be really useful, I want to make sure that, like, yes, you're the parent. Rules are ultimately up to you, but like, get input and have a conversation about it. Because just denying them one thing may mean they'll have some other way. Like, I have very few clients who don't also, like, if internet's an issue, have a gaming PC. This is not going to help you across that. It can help across a Mac, iPad, iPhone, and that's it. It can't help you if they have a gaming PC. That's going to be a different story. And so really having everyone on the same page is always, always, always going to be your best bet. So some of the features that they have it's yes, observing, and that includes things that they're doing on the web. And so you can track that. Individual app usage, which you already could do just straight up through family sharing and using screen time. You don't have to get a third-party service. Some of the things they had were incentive based. So you could have more game time after you took a walk. Like some were connected to an Apple Watch Move goal or to spending time in a reading app, or homework being done. Some of them were intrinsic. The system could tell when they'd done the things. And some of them were like the parent would have to release the control. And so sometimes it was like, okay, it's not that we're taking away gaming as much as that it is incentivized. You got this thing done. Now here's some game time, especially for younger kids. That tends to be a better incentive. And time of day, and of course, maybe nobody's going to use this API, right? It may end up being pointless. But assuming somebody does, because they have an incentive that is financial, as in you will pay money for it because they're not going to make up the money by selling your kids' data, then assuming people actually make them, somebody may not make it. Somebody may use the same API to do some of the things I work with adults on in restricting particular apps in a more strong-armed way than you can do within screen time. But we'll never know, right, until actual developers get their hands on it and give some things a try. But some of the things that they have access to, I'm going to consult my notes because, of course, I am. They can be by time of day. I've noticed a lot of adults too, but people that I work with of any age, things like games and movies in the morning can kind of make them a little bit crankier and have a harder time really actively engaging in the real world. So you may restrict by the morning time, maybe bedtime. Some systems may be for the whole family. Maybe you lock everybody out, including yourself, at dinner time, which was an interesting idea. So they could have incentives, and they could lock out after a period of time or just after another thing hasn't been done. One of the coolest things I saw was that the app could have their own, they called it branding, but it could also say, in the screen time app, it always says you've reached your limit, even if it's not that you have a limit set, which I still get frustrated with. But inside of it, you could have it like specifically say, go have a healthy snack, spend some time outside. That the messaging theoretically could be a lot more personal to like what goals you and your kids have set up, which I think just has huge potential, that it could be a lot more personalized. When we encourage kids to be a little bit more mindful and like, hey, have you noticed this thing? If you come at them blaming, by the way, in like a blaming tone, they'll much less often agree with you. But if you're like, hey, so I noticed you're a little bit crabby at this time. It is sometimes they're like, yeah, I think I am. And you can come up with, okay, well, like, let's work around it and really strategize together. And then the more customizable, it could be the right reminder. I mean, I wish I had that for my screen time. Like, if I go to a particular app and it's late at night, some cute picture of Grogu sleeping or something would be a lot better incentive than like, you have reached your limit, something that maybe is visceral and reminds me of that goal I had set for myself. Anyway, I just want to talk a little bit about the API. There's not a ton because we don't know if anybody's actually going to use it. But I am going to talk more about, when I discover it more, the options that adults have for themselves. And that'll be looking at the focus mode. I'm planning to do one in a little bit, just straight up exploring the app options live. So I've only kind of seen glimpses of it in the beta that I installed earlier today. And I just thought it'd be more fun to explore it live. So I'm going to do that in a little bit. But for now, this is some stuff on parenting, and hopefully some really cool apps will come out that will also be respective of your family's privacy. All right. Until then, talk to you later.